Today I want to explore the term social inclusion. It's one of those terms you'll hear a lot in community development, and it's an important term to the Community League movement in Edmonton. Social inclusion involves an individual's access to resources and their participation in economic, political, and social activity. Social exclusion is an enforced lack of participation in mainstream social, cultural, and economic and political activities. So in a country with universal human rights, we can take for granted that spaces are inclusive and that no one is being left out. However, certain forms of exclusion often get overlooked. An obvious example is that of accessibility, the accessibility of a physical space like a building. On paper, everyone is welcome in the building, but in reality, it is excluding those who cannot physically enter it. Similarly, a coffee shop is a public place, but when I worked with youth experiencing homelessness, they were often excluded from those spaces because they had no money. More subtle barriers can be constructed by social norms, something as simple as a dress code. They can also materialize as racism or discrimination, where in spite of people having access, they may not feel welcome, and so spaces are not felt to be inclusive. So whether it's cost, language barriers, accessibility, or the feeling of being unwelcome, public space can unintentionally be exclusive. Unlike the city club models that inspired the Community League movement to start in the early 1900s, the first league in Edmonton was open to anyone who lived in the geographical area. It was stated to be inclusive. And that's true today too. If you live in your neighborhood, you can be a member of your community league. But who is represented at leagues? Are they reflective of the neighborhoods they serve? In spite of the desire of leagues to be inclusive, and in spite of all the written statements, local research highlights low levels of participation in the leagues by certain groups that are often socially excluded. Research shows that new immigrant families, low-income residents, and transient residents, or renters, are less likely to join community associations. And this is actually true across Canada. This disconnect between the desire of an organization to be inclusive and the reality of its being exclusive brings us to a conversation about barriers. What's stopping people from participating? What are the barriers to participation in leagues? As a social worker interning with the EFCL this summer, this was one of my big questions that I brought to the table. What are the barriers? What are we missing here? And these are some common barriers that I found in my research and in speaking with members of leagues and people that are not involved currently with leagues. They include things like the cost of membership, the cost of programs, language barriers, the accessibility of buildings, the feeling of not being welcome, and programming that feels irrelevant to them. Now, the feeling of being unwelcome is subjective, but there are things that leagues can do to make the space more welcoming. Things like having a non-discrimination statement, a rainbow flag, having open board meetings using simple and easy language in your newsletters, having more than one language in your publications, like your newsletter or on your website, even if it's just a welcome brochure. Offering diverse food options. Some leagues offer halal meat or vegetarian options with the classic barbecue. Or offering diverse programs, not just geared to one part of your community like families with young children, but rather programming that considers the needs of various groups. I'm going to end this little intro to social inclusion with a question. How can we make sure that everyone in our neighborhood knows they are welcome at the Community League? If you want to chat more about this topic, consider coming to the event posted here and on our website. It's being planned by a group of passionate people from leagues across the city, and we'd love you to join. August 22nd, registration's at 5:30, and all the information can be found on the EFCL website. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to chat with us.